Aloha, everyone, and thank you so much for tuning in to another week of Trauma Recovery University. I'm your host, Athena Moberg, and with us in the green room is your incredible co-host, Bobby Parrish. And we show up here every week. Who are we? We show up here every week and we lead a live Q&A, live stream / Twitter chat for the adult survivor of childhood sexual abuse community. So if that is you, if you are an adult survivor of child abuse, specifically childhood sexual abuse, then you are in the right place, and we are so excited that you are here. I want to say a really quick hello to Destiny and Gina. It's their first time joining us tonight, and they're already on the Twitter stream along with several of our other friends, Dawn and a few others, already supporting one another. And this is how it works. We have 3 weekly Twitter chats, and this is number 2 of 3. And people send us their questions, and we answer them on Twitter and here on YouTube. And on Roku. So if you are listening on a podcast platform such as iTunes, Stitcher, Spreaker, SoundCloud, or iHeartRadio, this is a video broadcast. So please head on over to our Roku TV channel, which can be found easily by searching your channel guide for Trauma Recovery University, or you can head over to our YouTube channel, which can be found easily by searching for Trauma Recovery University on YouTube or youtube.com/Trauma Recovery University TV. Every single week, we have a different topic, and we answer questions on that topic for you, the adult survivors. This week's topic is kind of a two-sided topic, a double-part topic, encompassing the same topic, but there are 2 sides to it. This week's topic is borderline personality disorder and how to cope if you were raised with a parent who was living with untreated borderline personality disorder. So this is a loaded topic, and there are, like I said, multifaceted topic. Borderline personality disorder as a diagnosis. If that is you, welcome. This is a place of compassion. This is a place of support. This is a place of love and acceptance and kindness and not judgment. And if you were raised, you're an adult now, and you are an adult child dealing with a likely either undiagnosed or untreated borderline personality disordered or cluster B parent, then you are in the right place as well. And this is a place of tremendous support, compassion, non-judgmental love and kindness. And we are just honored and so excited that you have chosen to spend an hour of your week with us here tonight. We would love to be a source of encouragement for you. Head on over to the About section here and find out how you can get plugged into a safe community. At the end of our broadcast, we'll walk you through a really quick, this is how you get connected with us, and this is how you can receive free support from a global community of other people who get you and who will never judge you or be harsh with you. So welcome. Thank you so much for being here. I'm Athena Moberg. I'm going to hand this over to my incredible co-host, Bobby Parrish. And if you are a survivor, or you have a loved one who has been diagnosed with borderline, or if you are struggling or you just would like support, please just send us a tweet using the hashtag #NoMoreShame anytime and tag us at Athena Moberg, at Bobby L. Parrish. We would love to just send you a compassionate note, hit the little heart, let you know that we liked your tweet, and just let you know that you are not alone. Take it away, Bobby.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to our weekly video / Twitter chat. We're so glad that you're here. As Athena said, tonight we're talking about borderline personality disorder, and also how you, as a child of a parent who had untreated or undiagnosed borderline personality disorder, can find a healthy place. And chances are you probably have some recovery work to do. And I just want to state very clearly, we're talking about treated borderline personality disorder or undiagnosed in a parent. In no way or form are we here to say that if your parent had borderline personality disorder or has borderline personality disorder and they're in treatment, that they are doing something wrong. So we're here to support everybody. We have lots of peeps in our community who have been diagnosed with borderline personality disorder, and we support every means that they use to pursue healing and a recovery for their future. So before we go any further, I'm going to go ahead and issue a trigger warning. This is a broadcast that talks about childhood abuse and sometimes specifically childhood sexual abuse. And so we ask that you practice excellent self-care while you're listening or while you're watching the video feed or a recording of the video on Roku TV or YouTube. If you're triggered, just go ahead and shut the video broadcast down, shut the recording down, turn off the podcast. And if you need help in that moment, if you're in crisis, if you need help urgently, and you're in the US or Canada, we ask that you reach out to our friends at RAIN. That's the Rape, Abuse, Incest National Network. And their number is 1-800-656-HOPE, HOPE. They can also be reached through their crisis chat feature on their website, and that is RAIN, RAINN.org. If you are in the UK, you can reach out to the Samaritans. And the Samaritans can be reached at 116-123, or you can text them at 0775-909090. And you can even email the Samaritans at Joe, J-O, at samaritans.org. If you're in Australia, you can reach out to your national hotline, and that number is 131114. I almost did them all this week without looking at my little sticky note. Australia got me there at the end. So anyway, we're so happy to have all of you here. And this is kind of a sticky subject. We're going to talk about borderline personality disorder, the diagnosis and the criteria when we talk about the one page, get into the one page. But you're going to notice when you look at the criteria for being diagnosed with borderline personality disorder, that it sounds strangely like someone who has sustained childhood abuse. It talks about dissociation, it talks about mood regulation, talks about emotional regulation, talks about self-harming behavior, suicide. Well, guess what? That's a lot of us who have endured and survived childhood abuse. It is my personal belief as a professional, and Athena and I have done a video on common misdiagnoses in the survivor community, that often, if you are a survivor and you've been diagnosed with borderline personality disorder, that you have actually been misdiagnosed. And the appropriate diagnosis would be complex post-traumatic stress disorder. So CPTSD. Yes, I know there is no CPTSD diagnosis in the DSM-5. I know that. I get it. But that doesn't mean it doesn't exist. Sometimes, there have been so many disorders that it took a while to come into the mainstream and be accepted into the DSM categorization. So just because it's not in there yet doesn't mean that it doesn't exist. And unfortunately, borderline personality disorder has a lot of stigma attached to it. As both a therapist and a patient, I can't even begin to tell you how many times I have seen someone who has been diagnosed with borderline personality disorder and treated horribly by the mental health system. They can be treated as untouchable. They can be treated as not worth providing any services for because there's no cure. They are treated as a nuisance, needy, high maintenance, not the kind of clients that I want. I don't want to ever treat borderline personality. They're so hard to deal with. And it's atrocious. So I'm not really fond of survivors being misdiagnosed with a diagnosis that comes with yet another set of stigmas. But frankly, I'm not for anyone with borderline personality disorder, whether diagnosed accurately or inaccurately, being treated so poorly. And this morning we had our very first chat of the week. We have 3 chats every week, 3 Twitter chats. And the first one was this morning. The second one is tonight. If you're with us live, it's an interactive video and Twitter chat. And then tomorrow evening is the 3rd Twitter chat of the week. And this morning we had another practitioner show up for chat. And he too talked about that, the stigma that people with borderline personality disorder can suffer through. And he, like me, agrees that just because you're diagnosed with borderline personality disorder doesn't mean that it's hopeless. And it doesn't mean that you can't have a healthy life. It doesn't mean you're doomed to emotional pain and suicidal feelings and lousy relationships if that is something that you struggle with the disorder. So we're here today to talk about some ways that you can have help and hope if you're diagnosed with borderline personality disorder. And we're also here to let you know that it can get better. It can get so much better. So as we go through the one page today and we talk about borderline personality disorder, yes, you're going to see a lot of similarities between BPD and complex post-traumatic stress disorder. I actually once had a psychiatrist tell me that borderline personality disorder was just another form of PTSD. So there's just, as you can see, this is something that kind of gets the hair on the back of my neck standing up, because I've seen so much horrible treatment of people who have been diagnosed with borderline personality disorder. So we're going to go ahead and look at what people are saying on the Twitter stream, and really quick send out a hello to Destiny and Gina, who are here tonight for the first time. We're so glad that you're here. And we just want to say very clearly, welcome to the family. We say family because we have our own family of choice, and they are our friends who are our family. So Athena, what are people saying so far? Do we have any questions before we launch into more of an explanation about borderline personality disorder and hope and healing, and also the aspect of having a parent who is untreated or undiagnosed as BPD?
I don't have any questions from anyone yet, but the overall consensus is, wow, great topic. Oh my gosh, happy to be here. I'm listening. I'm here. Oh, Rebecca, the rapid nature of Twitter stresses me out, but I'm here and listening. Rebecca, you are not alone. I want to let you know. So many people have shared with us privately and publicly that the and again, it's executive functioning. We have a video, Harriet, somewhere, pop up the video on executive functioning. Executive functioning is what is used when we multitask. And if you're trying to tweet and think straight and then also watch and listen, you're engaging every single motor skill you have, and it's like a multitasking thing, and it can feel very triggering, very overwhelming, and you are not alone. It is, in fact, our findings that most of the members of our safe groups will not participate live and tweet. We have close to 1,000 people in one or many of our groups. And very few of them, a handful of them, can do live chat and watch. So you're not alone. And we're just happy that you're here. We're happy if you're watching a replay. We're just blessed. We're blessed to know that you're here. I don't have any questions so far. Just really excited that we're talking about this topic. They're glad to be here. I want, oh, here we go. Here's a question. Christy wants to know, when BPD is comorbid with NPD, what are the effects versus just NPD? And so if that's acronym overload for you guys, here, let me break it down for you really quick, and then I'll hand this over to Bobby and have her give her take on this. So BPD is short for borderline personality disorder. NPD is an acronym for narcissistic personality disorder. And Harriet, if you could pop up the video either here or here on children of narcissistic parents. It's one of the very first videos we ever did 2 years ago. That would be wonderful. So narcissism and narcissistic personality disorder, untreated, malignant narcissistic personality disorder, is on a spectrum, and borderline is on that spectrum. So they're in a cluster. There are several clusters. That's how they identify what type of personality that they are going to sort of categorize you in, and it's only for diagnosing purposes as per the Diagnostic Statistical Manual in America. And in the UK, they use something completely different, and the name of the book they use and the system they use is escaping me right now. But in America, in the United States, we use clinicians use the Diagnostic Statistical Manual, and we're on the 5th edition, the DSM-5. And so let's just say here's a rainbow. Okay, here's a rainbow, and malignant narcissistic personality disorder is on this end of the rainbow, and it's like darker shades of color, and then it goes lighter to the very lightest shades of color over here, and you will have complex PTSD and symptoms, because complex PTSD is not recognized in the Diagnostic Statistical Manual in the 5th edition. We're talking about having it be in the 6th edition, which we are all holding out for. So malignant narcissistic personality disorder is someone who is not only perhaps only interested in their own interests and is tuned out to other people's interests. They are not other-centered. They are not very self-aware. They have a grandiose vision of themselves. They are self-seeking to the point that their personality disorder causes them to be exploitative in nature. They meet their own needs and wants at the expense of other people, and often are very emotionally dysregulated and irrational and untreated. When you bring things to their attention, they either fly off in a rage, or they pretend they don't hear you, or they act like they hear you and then later they deny it. It's just this pervasive pattern. And the key word on any personality disorder that we discuss here on this channel is pattern. I'm not saying that if you're thinking, well, gosh, when I was out to dinner last week, I acted like that. I flew off the handle and I raised my voice and I did it, but that's not, but unless it's a pervasive pattern in your life, it is not likely that you are malignantly personality disordered as far as narcissistic personality disorder goes. So borderline is on that spectrum, in that cluster. When you are living with borderline personality disorder and it's untreated, you can be very emotionally dysregulated. You can love someone and gush out and just be very, very, very feeling so close to them, and you are so happy to be with them and everything is wonderful, but deep, deep, deep inside, you are terrified that they are going to leave you any second. And if they do, or if they do anything that shows that they may perhaps walk away from you or leave you, it can trigger a rage, it can trigger a meltdown. And again, this is untreated. Now, Now, narcissistic personality disorder differs from borderline personality disorder in my personal and professional opinion, because people, and this is the kicker, people that are living with malignant narcissistic personality disorder do not believe that there is anything wrong with them. If you were to say, but you do this and you do this and you do this, and then you meet your own needs at the expense of other people, and you fly off in a rage and you do this, they'll either ignore you or they'll go, yeah, and what's your point? What's the problem with that? There's absolutely nothing wrong with their behavior. That is their belief. When you talk about borderline personality disorder, if it's untreated, there's nothing that says that they believe that nothing's wrong with them. On the other hand, they're likely going, what's wrong with me? What's wrong with me? Why do I feel this way? Why do I feel this way? I just want to feel better. I just want to feel better. What's the deal? And they likely will reach out for help. And if they receive the proper trauma-informed care that they deserve, which dialectical behavioral therapy, which is what we are going to discuss on the one page, along with, I believe, group, being in a group of other people, and other things that we will discuss in depth on the one page, there is hope for them becoming more emotionally regulated and having sustainable, happy, loving relationships. The narcissist, the malignant narcissist, not only will they likely never have lasting, beautiful relationships, but they don't care. They just don't care. If they're a malignant narcissist and they're not treated, they don't care if they have lasting, beautiful, in-depth, quality relationships. That's not what they care about. They care about meeting their needs at all costs, even if it's at the expense of others. Not only at the expense of others. They don't wake up and go, who can I screw over today so I can meet my needs? No, they wake up going, what do I need and how can I get it? And I will do whatever I need to do to get it, no matter what, period. And that doesn't involve relationships. So I hope that answers your question, Christy. That's my take, personally and professionally. That it's on a spectrum, but what I have seen with people who are living with borderline personality disorder, they desperately want help, and they desperately want to feel better, and they will do whatever they need to get the help they need so they can live the life that they want and have the relationships that they so desire. And if they want it bad enough and they reach the proper trauma-informed individual, they will receive the care they deserve and they will live a happy, fulfilled life. Oftentimes finding that trauma-informed helping professional can be the challenge. And if they don't have dialectic behavioral therapy to help them create healthy habits and mindfulness, it is difficult for them to become regulated enough to enjoy sustainable relationships. So I hope I spelled that out in a way that wasn't too much jargon. Bobby, do you think that I used too much jargon, or I'd love to hear your take on that?
No, I don't think you used too much jargon at all. And I appreciate your delineation between borderline personality disorder and narcissistic personality disorder. One of the things that is kind of a hallmark for people who are in that cluster B personality disorder set is the struggle with relationships. Okay, they either have zero insight into what makes a healthy relationship, or they have zero interest in having a healthy relationship because they are, I mean, a relationship, right? A healthy relationship is give and take. People who have malignant narcissism just want to take. They're not interested in giving anything to you. So a struggle with relationships, a struggle with healthy relationships is, now of course there are many reasons why people struggle with having healthy relationships, but it's a hallmark sign of people along that cluster B personality disorder spectrum. And someone just made a statement on the Twitter stream, and I want to point this out. She said, wow, you know, my I think she said father, but I'm not sure. My father has a lot of qualities of being narcissistic personality disorder. Many of us have a quality that would be similar to something within a particular personality disorder. That doesn't mean that we are that or that we meet the criteria. All of us are imperfect. All of us have things that we want to work on, we need to work on. Just because, and we've gotten this several times when you talk about things like narcissism, when we talked about anger issues. And people say, oh, my mother, my father was a malignant narcissist, and I'm terrified of growing up to be just like them. And we're here to tell you that if you ask that question, then you're not a malignant narcissist, because narcissists don't worry about whether or not how they impact other people, or they don't even begin to believe that there could be anything that's wrong with them. So all of us have things we need to work on, but that doesn't mean that we fit that tight criteria of being personality disordered. And by the same token, our parents can have, some characteristics of being narcissistic personality disorder, maybe a characteristic or two of being avoidant personality disordered, but they don't meet the full-blown criteria. So there's lots of room for us to self-diagnose, but we don't want you diagnosing yourself just because you might see a quality or two in common with one of the personality disorders. And it is very hard to find a borderline personality disorder therapist who is trauma informed. But we also have to remember that 30% of people who are diagnosed with borderline personality disorder don't have a trauma history. They were raised within relatively healthy families. So for those individuals, it's not necessarily important to find a trauma-informed therapist. But for those who were raised in that traumatic environment and have borderline personality disorder rather than complex post-traumatic stress disorder, you definitely, so definitely want someone who is trauma-informed and can do dialectical behavioral therapy. That's just critical. That's the gold standard of treatment. And I have seen that be so successful. I think for narcissists, the reason they don't seek treatment is because they don't think anything is wrong. I think a lot of people who have borderline personality disorder are acutely aware that they do not feel well, they don't feel healthy, they're suffering, and they feel a tremendous amount of pain. 70% of people with borderline personality disorder report chronic feelings of suicidality. Okay? So they're in so much emotional pain that they feel like they're at least entertaining the idea that they would like to kill themselves.
Hey, Bobby. My apologies if I interrupted your thought. Did I interrupt your thought?
That's okay. I was just going to say that even though they may recognize that they're suffering, when they get into therapy and they realize the work that they might need to do in order to, come to a happy, healthy place in life, that's the point where sometimes I see people with borderline leave the treatment process. Because within that, one of the whole major premise of borderline personality disorder is that fear of abandonment. And so we have to heal some of those issues. And when you get into a relationship to try to heal issues, then you risk being abandoned. So treatment can be a very, very, very frightening thing for people who have borderline personality disorder. So while they realize that they're suffering, they're not always willing to do the kind of deep, deep, hard work that might be necessary for them to feel like they're finally living a life that they want to lead. Do we have a question, Athena, or a comment, or somebody needs clarification?
We have 3 questions.
All right, let's hit them.
But they're all very similar. One question was, so I believe my husband has narcissistic personality disorder. Does that automatically mean I'm borderline personality disorder? And my answer is no, a resounding no. That's not one of the boxes that need to be ticked in order for you to have a diagnosis of borderline personality disorder. We're going to go over the list of indicators and a full description of what borderline personality disorder is here in just a moment. We're going to get there super duper quick. But just because you have a spouse that's narcissistic personality disorder does not mean that you are borderline. That was Liz's question. Katie's question was, my therapist said, you have borderline tendencies. What does that even mean? Well, in my opinion, that means that your therapist probably isn't trauma informed if she just spouted that out and didn't give you any explanation. So, not trying to vilify or bash your therapist, but I would never say to a client, you have borderline tendencies. Okay, see you next week. And like not give them that. To me, this is a conversation that you have with the client, and there's different indicators, and there's questions, and there's care, and there's protocol, and leaving you with all these questions and just making a statement like that doesn't seem trauma informed in my personal or professional opinion. And then the third question was, Grace Hope says, so if you experienced abandonment all your life and you feel like if you let people get close to you, they might abandon you, now you have BPD. Now you have borderline. And it wasn't even really she might have run out of the 140 characters on Twitter because there isn't a question mark. It's more like a statement. And my answer is no. Just because you experienced abandonment all your life and you feel like if you let people get close to you, they might abandon you, does not mean that you have borderline personality disorder. It means that you are reacting normally to an abnormal situation because it's not healthy for anyone to experience abandonment their entire life. If anyone experiences abandonment their entire life, they are likely to be feeling afraid that people are going to abandon them. And that does not mean they have borderline. So that means they're afraid of being abandoned. Now, I'm not suggesting that fear of abandonment and abandonment issues and attachment issues do not come into play with regards to borderline personality disorder, but simply saying that if they experienced abandonment and now they're afraid of being abandoned, that they have borderline, it's not that cut and dry. We're going to go into great detail, explain, and you'll notice when we describe a personality disorder, the key phrase is pervasive pattern. Pervasive pattern. It's something that is your go-to. It is what you do naturally. It is something that you do over and over and over and over and over again for years and years and years and years and years. It's just what you do. And you don't do likely anything different. That's just what you do. Like, that's a pervasive pattern. Like, if I raise my voice at my son and yell at him and lose my temper and cry and rage, and I feel so terrible and it was like a wake-up call, and I go out and I receive the help that I need. I check out books from the library and I find out what's wrong, what's up with this anger, what's going on with rage, what's the difference between anger and rage, why am I lashing out at my child, how can I make sure that that never happens again? Does that mean that I'm a rageaholic and that I'm an abusive mother? I would probably say no. It means that I lost my temper, I flew into a rage, I felt terrible about it, and I'm seeking the help that I need. But I'm not going to label myself, oh, she's an abusive mother. I'm an abusive mother. Because that's a very real example. I did rage out at my kid. I did make him cry. I did lose my temper with him. And it scared the living daylights out of me. And I got the help I needed. I did go to the library. I did check out books, and I did get the help I needed to find out why I was angry and raging, and what's the difference between anger and rage, and how can I make sure that never happens again, so it would not become a pervasive pattern in my life. So, Bobby, those are the 3 questions. If you experience abandonment in your life and you feel if anybody gets close to you, they might abandon you. Now you have BPD. My therapist says I have borderline tendencies, and my husband has NPD. So does that automatically mean that I have BPD? Those are the 3 questions, and I would love for you to share your wisdom, your amazing wisdom on those topics.
Well, I think, is it Liz who's talking about if my partner has NPD, does that mean I have BPD? I think that's who I saw ask
Yes.
that question. And what she's addressing is the fact that there is a common myth within the mental health field that people who have borderline personality disorder are like, it's often they pair with someone, so they partner up with someone who is narcissistic personality disorder, because the 2 disorders
complement one another?
I was going to say complement or feed each other.
It's like symbiotic or parasitic.
It is.
Yeah, symbiotic.
It is. So there is a stereotype, and I'm going to say that really clearly, a stereotype that 2 people in a relationship, or one of them is narcissistic personality disorder, that means the other person is going to be BPD, and that's a stereotype and a myth. It's not true. And then I hear people talking tonight about, okay, so if I fear abandonment, does that mean that I'm borderline? The basis behind a personality disorder is that, and this is why complex oh my word, good grief.
Complex
CPTSD. Yes, is such a better fit. In fact, is a fit for trauma survivors, because the whole reason that psychiatrists and psychologists and the mental health field came up with the classification of personality disorders is because they didn't believe there was any reason to explain why these people were acting the way they were. And their conclusion was that these people were born with a faulty personality. Okay? So that takes out all of us who have a reason to fear abandonment. If you have a reason to fear abandonment because guess what? You were abused and abandoned by person after person after person, you're not BPD. If you are experiencing a difficulty with emotional regulation, okay, if one day you're fine and the next day you're sad, you're having a hard time, and you come from a trauma background where your whole emotional life hung in the balance of abuse, you have a reason to be emotionally dysregulated. Okay? So if there's a reason behind why you have the challenges or the issues that you have, if that is rooted in what happened to you as a child, if you have a trauma history, then you don't have borderline personality disorder. you have complex PTSD. And I would never, if I have a client who comes in and they share some of the, they show some of the characteristics of both complex post-traumatic stress disorder and BPD, which when we put up the one page and you see the diagnostic criteria for BPD, you're going to look at it and go, that's trauma. That's a person who was traumatized. So if I have someone come into my office and sit down and they have some of those characteristics and they have a trauma history, I would never diagnose them with BPD. Never. I would never diagnose them as borderline, because it's not a pervasive personality issue that just came from nowhere. It has a reason. It has an instance or a history that gave birth to that issue. Okay? So if you're sitting right now and you're thinking, oh gosh, I have abandonment issues, maybe I'm borderline. Well, if you have a trauma history, then no, you're not borderline, because there's a reason for you to have abandonment issues, because you were abandoned, either emotionally or physically. So I just want to throw that out there, and hopefully that will help people differentiate between what is something that's a result of their trauma versus what is something that people would label as belonging to a personality disorder, meaning that it was something pretty much that someone was born with, keeping in mind that the mental health community does not support giving someone a personality disorder diagnosis before the age of 18. That being said, I have worked with children who have the characteristics of a personality disorder before the age of 18 without a trauma history or a trauma background. But it's common practice not to diagnose a personality disorder before the age of 18, because even though there's research that shows that someone's personality forms by the time they're 6, they kind of want to give that person a chance to, go through the discovery of who am I, what am I doing, and how am I going to make my way in the world before they're officially diagnosed. I predict that you'll see changes of that in the future, that you will see that roll back a bit, and you'll see personality disorders diagnosed at younger and younger ages. But at this time, it's generally considered a no-no. So children who have cluster B personality disorder tendencies like malignant narcissism, you'll see them diagnosed as oppositional defiant, or sometimes reactive attachment disordered. So I hope that helps. It hurts my heart that people are thinking.
Well, I appreciate the care that you took to describe the difference between something that is a result of our trauma versus a personality disorder, because there is such a stigma attached to borderline personality disorder mostly, but any personality disorder.
Yes, any personality, there's a stigma.
Yes, correct. But I appreciate the care and the time that you took to describe and to differentiate the two. And, Simi and all of us, we're not alone. We have trauma in our past, and we have symptoms of fear of abandonment that manifest themselves in different ways. And it doesn't necessarily mean that we're borderline. So, Bobby, I really appreciate the way that you described that, and the way you went into detail on that, Bobby.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I hope that helps people.
I think that will be a light bulb moment for a lot of people, Bobby. I really do. I do.
Good. We like those. I love light bulb moments.
We do. I have one more question. Should we answer one more question? And then there's going to be a lot more, I'm sure. But I would like to answer this question, because I think many people will have this question. And so Dominique says, is it likely that a narcissistic personality disordered individual in a romantic relationship would seek relationship therapy / fake remorse in order to keep their partner as narcissistic supply. And I am so happy someone asked this question. And I would first like to explain what the term briefly, what narcissistic supply is. So do you remember the rainbow from the beginning of the video? Here's the dark, dark, dark colors, and it goes light, 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 lighter over here. Okay, complex PTSD over here, malignant narcissistic personality disorder over here, dark. So narcissistic supply, when I said they don't wake up and go, who can I hurt today? No. Someone who's malignantly personality disordered, a malignant narcissist, doesn't wake up going, who can I hurt today? They wake up and think, how can I get all of my needs met and most of my wants, if not all of them, regardless of who I hurt or what happens, because I don't care about any of that. All I care about is my needs. I have needs today, whether they be sexual needs, money, power, friendships, status, whatever it is that I need. I want those needs met, and I want them met now, today. And I don't care what I have to do to get those needs met. The thing, if you were to turn that thing that I just described into like a jar of something on the counter, that jar would be narcissistic supply. And the narcissist would go, ha, I know, I will drink this jar of narcissistic supply right now, and all of my needs will be met. But the whole purpose is, like, obviously not everyone's financial status, sexual, and whatever desires and needs are going to be met by drinking something. So they go out and they look for the best possible way to get every single one of their needs met, whether that is through a relationship or a person or a place or a thing or whatever, or driving down a certain road, playing a certain kind of music, wearing a certain kind of clothes, attracting a certain kind of human, whatever it might be. Whatever their object of desire is, that is called narcissistic supply. Whatever causes them to feel the most powerful and the most filled up, that is narcissistic supply. So the question that Dominique asks is it common for someone who is malignantly narcissistic personality disordered to fake some sort of remorse and go into therapy to receive relationship counseling in an effort to keep this partner around as a source of narcissistic supply? And my answer to that question, Dominique, is it depends. It depends on the narcissist. The only constant in the life of a narcissist regarding narcissistic supply is that it will change every day with the wind, however they decide that it's going to change. If they decide that going to this therapist bruises or wounds their ego and they incur a narcissistic injury, they'll kick that person to the curb and everyone else and go out and find another way to meet their needs. But if they get into sort of a tit-a-tat sort of discussion with the therapist, and they find that they can sort of woo the therapist and con the counselor into believing that they're the victim and their spouse or their girlfriend is the meanie who's blaming everything on them, and I'm the wounded one here, and and then the counselor and the therapist is like really calls out the other person that wanted the relationship therapy, then that is, if the narcissist can't be the biggest and the baddest and the best, then they need to be the best victim. Number one, they want to be the best, but if they can't be the best, second best is to be the best victim. So it depends on the day and it depends on the narcissist. So I wouldn't say it's quote unquote common as you put in your tweet, but I would say that it's possible, and I've seen it firsthand.
Yes.
And I would love to turn this over to Bobby. I hope that explained my answer. That was a pretty colorful answer.
Yes.
But I would love to hand it over to you, Bobby, and hear your wisdom on that topic.
Yes. As having worked as a marriage and family therapist, yeah, absolutely. If a narcissist thinks that there is some benefit to their pretending that they are remorseful, they'll do it in a heartbeat. If they think that going to therapy will preserve the relationship with this person who feeds their desire for power and grandiosity and delusion so well, then they'll go ahead and go, and they'll do exactly what Athena said. They will sit down and they will take one of two roads. They'll either sit there and say, I don't think there's any reason for us to be here. We have an incredible relationship. I love him or her. Everything is wonderful. And so, I don't know why we're here. Or they will play the victim. Look, okay, so we're here because she is just crazy. I mean, you need to hear the things that I have to put up with. Oh my goodness, it's craziness. And then they will spend, the rest of the therapy session, unless you have a good therapist who nips that in the bud and says, no, not going to happen, ranting and raving about everything they have to put up with as the spouse or partner of the person sitting next to them. So, like Athena said, everything that a narcissist does is toward the end, or furthers their goal of having power and meeting their own needs. They don't do things that have any other motivation. So, yeah, it's absolutely within their realm to pretend to be remorseful. It's absolutely in their realm to pretend like, yeah, they support going to therapy. They'll do what they have to do to preserve a relationship with someone who feeds their needs until they realize that that's not going to happen anymore. And then, like Athena said, they kick that person to the curb and move on to the next. So,
Thank you so much, Bobby. Liz was responding to both of us and said, but I thought that if he was narcissistic personality disordered and I was codependent. And I want to say this loud and clear. And I know that if Bobby could have her face right here next to mine, we would both be right here saying to you, codependent traits and tendencies do not equal borderline personality disorder. They don't. They're not the same. They're not synonymous. Can you be diagnosed with borderline personality disorder and be codependent? Yes. Can you have codependent traits and not be borderline personality disordered? Absolutely. They're not synonymous.
No.
No. Right, Bobby?
No.
Yeah, because I mean, a lot of us have codependent traits. I mean, codependency very basically is my happiness and my attitude and my day is dependent upon how someone else shows up in the world. And I need to do whatever I can to meet their needs so that they can have a good day, so that I can have a good day. Even if they're freezing cold, I'll light myself on fire to keep them warm, just to make sure that we can all have a good day and be warm together. That's codependency. That is not synonymous with borderline personality disorder. That's not to say that borderline personality disordered individuals are not also codependent, because they can be, but they're not synonymous. I hope that helps. Bobby, what do you think?
I agree. And again, is there a reason? Okay, so the reason I light myself on fire to keep others warm is because in my childhood, that was the role I was put in. I was the one who met, and trigger warning, I was the one who met my father's sexual needs. Okay? So again, I was lit on fire to meet someone else's needs. And guess what? I learned how to do it. And I was expected to be the emotional caretaker of my mother. And so I learned how to light myself on fire to make her happy and him happy. So that's something I carried into my adulthood. It has a reason behind it. It has a basis behind it because of my trauma history. it's not like just out of the blue, I decided, you know what? Today, I'm just going to light myself on fire to keep others warm for no reason whatsoever, and the fact that I like to burn. No, there's a reason. And although it may not make a lot of sense to people who don't have a trauma background, to most of us who have a trauma background, that makes perfect sense. So that behavior does not mean that you have a personality disorder. Amanda had asked the question.
I was just ready to tell you that.
Yes. Can you be borderline personality disorder and also have a trauma background, a trauma history? And I responded to her that in my professional opinion, no. When you have a trauma history, it is not BPD, it is complex post-traumatic stress disorder. I'm going to trip over that one all night, it seems. So then her comment was, okay, so my mother, who I thought maybe had BPD, then doesn't. And I want to say, if your mom likely has complex post-traumatic stress disorder, and that too, some people who have a trauma background will do anything not to face what happened to them. And so just because your mom has a trauma history and has complex post-traumatic stress disorder, it doesn't mean that she will choose or has chosen to get help. She may rage out at you. She may blame you for everything that is wrong in the world. She may go from happy to angry in 10 seconds flat. She may engage in self-destructive behaviors like drinking or doing drugs or self-harm in order to cope with her emotional dysregulation. That looks like BPD, but she has a history of trauma. But there are so many people out there who have a history of trauma who are so terrified of facing that trauma, the pain of that abuse, that they're not going to do it. And so oftentimes those two can mimic each other. Someone who does not want to get help for their BPD looks a lot like someone who doesn't want to get help for their complex post-traumatic stress disorder. So it's still, in my head, the way you're describing it, Amanda, it still fits. The puzzle pieces still fit together. And I hope that helps.
I think
Athena, what do you think?
I think that definitely helps. And yet I want to add to it, because I don't necessarily disagree with you. I agree with everything you've said, but I think that it is necessary to add on to what you said, because in this video, we have discussed narcissistic personality disorder, malignant NPD. And this is where I draw the line, Amanda, and anyone else who's wondering about this. So let's say Susie was born into a traumatic home. Susie had abusive parents, an abusive alcoholic father, and a rageaholic mother, and she was severely from a very young age and bounced around the foster care system, was likely abused multiple different times. And then Susie grew up to be an adult. And Susie got into a romantic relationship with a codependent. And Susie was a drug addict, alcoholic, and was in this romantic relationship, ended up getting married to another drug addict, alcoholic, and they had a child. And Susie and her romantic partner that she's married to, that are the parents of this little child, raised this child in an abusive environment with drugs, alcohol, exploitation, crazy stuff, trafficking, neglect, hunger, all kinds of crazy stuff. And when Susie is confronted with the fact that her living this crazy life, and even though she comes from a trauma background and she likely has some sort of a personality disorder, and she really, really, really should get some help, because not only is she married to an abusive person, but she's raising a child in an abusive environment who will likely be traumatized from birth, but she's not contributing to society, and she's abusing everyone around her, including her child. And when that is brought to Susie's attention, Susie says, F you. What is it any business of yours? I'm fine, and I don't need help. I don't need help, and no one here can tell me that I need help. So screw all of you, and screw you, and screw you, and screw you. And that is different than someone who is undiagnosed borderline personality disordered, untreated BPD, who just came from a trauma background, who might have CPTSD instead. In my personal, professional, and real life experienced opinion, that person who doesn't believe they need help, doesn't want help, and will manipulate every person around them to the degree to get their own needs met at the expense of everyone else, even though they come from a trauma background. It was extremely traumatizing. Abusive alcoholic father, rageaholic mother, foster care system, abuse of every flavor. Hello. The fact that she does not want help and will continue to cannibalize and exploit every person in her path, in my opinion, even though she comes from a trauma background, makes her a malignant NPD. And I can't diagnose people, but that is my personal and professional opinion. So I hope that helps. If she wants help and she is willing to receive help, and she's undiagnosed, untreated, but she's willing to get help so that she can be in relationship with others, and she has a desire to be in relationship with others, and she is willing to receive the help she needs, to me, that is the deciding factor. Because if someone is not willing to receive help, thinks there's no problem with their behavior, and continues to abuse and exploit, abuse and exploit, abuse and exploit, that is malignant narcissism, not borderline. If they're just emotionally dysregulated and they're struggling, and they just need help, and they need to face that help, but they don't know how, and it's not exploitative, meeting their needs at the expense of everyone else, then yeah, that's likely complex PTSD that's been misdiagnosed as borderline. But if they've been shown the error of their ways with evidence that their behavior is abusive and detrimental to people around them, and they smirk and laugh and say, oh well, screw you, I'm going to keep doing this and I don't care what you say. To me, if there's that blatant defiance, Bobby, regardless of that person's trauma background, Susie that we're talking about, I do believe that they can be malignant narcissistic personality disordered, or even whatever other personality disorder they might have, regardless of their trauma background. And that's just my opinion. I don't need you to agree with me, but that's just, I wanted to add to what you said.
And I agree. I think that with narcissistic personality disorder, you can have an abuse background and also have narcissistic personality disorder. I think that an abuse background and BPD might be a little bit of a different shaped animal in the farm of issues. So if someone has an abuse history, I am much less likely to diagnose him with BPD than I would complex post-traumatic stress disorder. If someone has an abuse history and meets all the criteria of a narcissistic personality disorder, I'm much more comfortable with that one. And unfortunately, that, obviously, Athena's experienced that. Many people in our community have experienced that. It comes into play much more often than I would ever wish for anyone to experience it having happened. So I hope that helps. I don't know whose question that was, but I hope that that helps.
I think it was Amanda.
Rebecca asked a question. She said, any thoughts about what to do when a loved one with BPD is in a self-destructive suicidal spiral? And I want to address that really quickly. Anyone who has a history of self-destructive behavior or suicidal thoughts and thinking needs to have a crisis management plan. I don't care why, if it's borderline personality, if it's complex post-traumatic stress disorder, if it's whatever the reason is, anyone who has a history of suicidal thinking and ideation and has that tendency to do that downward spiral needs a crisis management plan. And that crisis management plan needs to clearly set out what are my signs and symptoms that I'm starting to spiral downward, and then what will I do? You know, for example, when so I'm going along in life and I start thinking about suicide. That's the first step in my downward spiral. So what I will do if that happens is sit down and begin to journal. So my response for that in my personal crisis management plan might be, I will sit down and journal to see if I can figure out what it is that has tripped my suicidal thinking to come into play. Okay, if that doesn't resolve that, and the next thing I then start doing is isolating and staying away from social interactions. So the next step I'm going to do is, despite the fact that I don't want to, I'm going to reach out to, one person via text, whatever it is. And then you just keep going like that, and down and down and down until, probably the lowest thing is I have a plan, I go to the emergency room. And so when you have someone in your life who has that suicidality, downward spiral, then the answer is, what are you doing? Where are you on your crisis management plan? What are you enacting? What step are you on? What have you done? And so they always, an adult is an adult is an adult is an adult. Okay? So all of us at the end of the day are responsible for our own behavior. For us as survivors, it just bites like crazy that we were victimized and now have these mental health issues that we have to be responsible for fixing, even though we didn't break them. But the reality is that it's on us. If we want to get better, we have to do the work. Okay? So if I have a history of going in a downward spiral, it is my responsibility to set a plan in place to deal with that. And if you have a loved one who has this tendency to spiral, it's okay to hold them accountable for following their plan. That's 100% okay. So that when they start that downward spiral, I see you're spiraling. I notice the signs and symptoms. You're feeling badly. Have you gotten out your crisis management plan? Are you working that plan? Have a plan, work a plan. So that's my recommendation, is that if you have a loved one who spirals for no matter what reason it is, they need to have a crisis management plan. They've got to have one. And when they get to the place where they need to access it, then they need to be held accountable for taking care of themselves and accessing it. And that's why they need to get to that crisis management plan. They need to catch it at the earliest stage, because there is a point down in that downward spiral where they're not going to access their crisis management plan because, frankly, they feel so terrible that they don't have the energy, they don't have the motivation, and at that point, their suicidality is just, I don't want to do it, I'm done. So have a plan and work the plan from beginning. Catch it early. But you are never responsible for lighting yourself on fire to help a family member or a loved one who is spiraling. It's just the way that goes. And that's hard sometimes, especially if that person is someone that we truly and genuinely care about. We want to rescue them. And we as survivors, we are so prone to go into rescue mode because that's what we learned as children, right? I rescued my mother from dealing with her own mental health issues. So I learned that when I was knee-high to a grasshopper. And so I have to watch myself and be aware that I have that tendency so I don't do it. So I hope that helps. And we do have a video on crisis management plans. And so Harriet, if you put the little video link up there, you can see, Rebecca, how to go through and walk through doing a crisis management plan with someone. Or you can give the link to them and they can walk through and make one themselves.
Yeah,
so
the crisis management plan video is super duper helpful. And that was about 2.5 years ago, Bobby. Remember when we were doing that, that video, and I was like, I remember being in the video going, I think I need a crisis management plan for this video because I'm feeling very emotionally dysregulated, and I feel like I've been in this low grade crisis the whole time. And we went down, and I was sort of the client in that moment, and you were the coach / therapist, and we walked through the crisis management plan together, and you told me what my indicators would be. And remember?
Yeah.
It was very helpful. It was very real time, just in time for our video. I was having a crisis, so so there was a question here, and I said I will answer this on the video. I will answer this right now. Oh, I can't find it, but I know what here it is. Gina says, what is the difference between malignant narcissism and narcissism? I'll be super brief because we're running out of time here, and I will say, Gina, the difference is if there is healthy narcissism. There is. Some people will disagree with me. The jury is out. Some people will say there's no such thing as healthy narcissism. Narcissism is evil. But I will say that there is healthy narcissism. And let's say that malignant narcissism is with a capital N, and let's say that healthy narcissism is with a little n. So little n, healthy narcissism, malignant narcissism, capital N, okay? And this is the difference. If I am channeling my inner narcissist with a little n, I'm going to say, you know what? I am going to take care of me today. I'm going to make sure that I brush my teeth and I practice good hygiene and I eat healthy. I take my vitamin supplements. I go for a walk. I get my work done. I know that I should be doing this, and this for all these other people. But you know what? I'm going to do this for me today because I need to. That's channeling my inner narc with a little n. Now, malignant narcissism would be, hi, I just woke up and I don't care who I hurt today and who I cause to suffer or how much pain they go through. I'm going to meet all my needs today and screw the rest of the world. F them. I'm going to go here. I'm going to eat there. I don't care if I'm supposed to meet up with that person. Screw them. They'll understand because it's me. I mean, hello, they want to hang out with me. So I'm going to go here instead. I'm going to cancel on that person. And I don't care who I hurt. I'm going to get my needs met. So little n, healthy narcissism, you have your needs be met. You do what is healthy. You do what is good. You do what is good for you. Malignant narcissism, at the expense of everyone else, you will have your needs met no matter what, regardless of who you hurt or who you screw over. Bobby, your comments on that?
You know, I think that's interesting because You call it narcissism with a little n. I call it self-care.
But for the sake of the question, I wanted to like play out what healthy narcissism. But how funny that most of us are like, we self-care. What is this self-care you speak of?
Right.
Right? Like, it's so foreign to us because a lot of us are so terrified. Bobby, you and I talk about this even off the air. We're so terrified of showing up and being just like our narcissistically abusive parental figure. Like you were always in charge of meeting your mother's emotional needs, and you were lit on fire to meet your father's sexual needs.
Right.
At the expense of their capital N narcissism and dysfunction.
Right.
Now, if it was like what a healthy family would function like, if everyone had a little n, the father wouldn't be sexually abusive. The mother would meet her own needs because she's an adult, is an adult, as you said, which is so perfect. And the child would have all of their needs met because children are dependent upon their adult parents, because children get to be children and adults are adults. So a healthy family doesn't have capital N. They have healthy boundaries. The children is allowed to say no. They're allowed to have their needs met always. The parents meet their own needs because they're adults and they don't expect young children to meet their needs. And many of us on this channel, almost 100% of us, are adult survivors of child abuse. We likely grew up in a situation, if our abuse happened in the home, where there was an individual that met their own needs at the expense of ours. That is a capital N, in my opinion.
Yep.
Now, am I saying that the whole world is filled with malignant narcissists? No, but there's a pretty good percentage of them out there roaming around pretending to be normal humans, and they're not normal humans. So
no. My psychiatrist, she looks at me and she says, when I complain about something, that he did that just is so off the charts, unbelievable to me that someone would even begin to be that grandiose or that delusional. And she, Bobby, I keep telling him, you can't expect him to respond like a normal human being. And it's like, but rational human beings don't do those things. And her response is, but he's not a rational human being. He's a narcissist.
correct.
His brain doesn't work the way yours does. And I'm getting that. I'm getting there. But, somebody else made the comment of, I don't understand how if my parent was abused and they experienced that firsthand, how in the world can they then turn around and abuse us? And I'm with you. It's baffling, absolutely baffling to me. And I wonder sometimes, so what happened in me that I saw what happened to myself and went, I'm not doing that. There's no way. This is it. We're done. I mean, like Athena, I have generation after generation after generation after generation of family dysfunction, alcoholism, abuse behind me. And so what is it in me that was able to see it and say, no more? No, this is it. It ends here, right here with me. It doesn't go on. And yet for them, the clarity wasn't there. And so if I were to ever, win a huge grant to do research, that's what I would look into. But it is a baffling question. And it's okay for you to wonder.
My answer was they lacked self-awareness and cognitive empathy.
So how did I get mine?
You don't lack self-awareness and cognitive empathy. I don't think that.
I know, but how did I get self-awareness and cognitive empathy when the 10 generations behind me didn't?
I could say the same thing about myself. You and I have gone down this road before, and I believe the answer to your question, Miss Bobby, is that you saw the shrapnel and the devastation and the minefield and the destruction so clearly, and you chose a different path. You intentionally
I did.
And you were willing.
I did. It was very intentional.
My real answer to this is God. Honestly, if we're going to boil it down to, and we're going to simmer this pot on the stove down till there's nothing left in the pot, but like a little residue, it's God. That's my opinion. I believe God put it on your heart and gave you his eyes so that you would see the world the way he sees it, and that you would want something better for your children someday, and something better for yourself, and something better for humanity. And I believe God is using you as an amazing, powerful instrument of good and love and wholeness and hope. And that is my boiled down, simmered down answer. But the bland, worldly answer is you chose. But I believe it was God. I believe it was a divine intervention. And I believe the same for me. I'm not saying I'm so awesome that God tapped me on the shoulder and chose me. Like, that's not what I'm saying, because that would be very narcissistic of me with a capital N. I'm saying that I believe that some people respond to that call to be loving and kind and to be the change and to use their powers for good. And it doesn't happen on accident, Bobby. You wake up every day and you choose to be good. You wake up every day and you choose to do what's right. You choose to mother your son in a way that is compassionate and caring. I made every single one of those choices myself. I remember sitting there when I was a little girl, just like you do, and just wishing and hoping that someday it was going to be different.
Yeah.
And guess what? Some people wish and hope that they can become a fireman or an airplane pilot or a doctor. And when you and I were little girls, we hoped and wished that we could someday be kind and loving and good and
be loved.
And be loved. And yeah, and be what we never had, like you said. So what do I want to be when I grow up? Well, I want to be what I am right now. I want to be loving and kind, and I want to love God and love other people, and I want to be good at it. That's all I want. And I think that you and I are both doing that.
Try. We try.
We do try. We do try, and we're making a difference. We receive emails and tweets and a lot of confirmation that we're making a difference. So
okay. Should we do the one page?
Yeah, great segue though. Bobby, I want to encourage you. You're doing everything. You're doing everything that you set out to do, Bobby. You're doing everything you were called to do. You are touching countless lives, and I'm so proud of you, and I'm proud to be here doing this with you. I think I lost Bobby right in the middle of saying something super special. I lost her. That was a little anticlimactic. Well, hopefully we will get her back. Hopefully she will come back. She has the one page. And I have the one page too, but I would love for her to share the one page because she does it so well. Maybe I will pull it up. Uh-oh. Something's happening here. And I don't know what. There we go. Oh, Bobby, are you back?
I'm here.
Oh, okay. I couldn't hear you, and it was just weird and black. And
I know. I got a little message that said my network connection is experiencing difficulties.
Uh-oh.
Can you hear me now?
I can hear you perfect now, and I can see your screen, and I'm so happy. I was scrambling to try to find the screen share.
I feel like the little Verizon man who now works for Sprint, right?
Yes.
Okay. Borderline personality disorder, BPD, is a pervasive pattern of behavior. And just a full stop here for a minute. Pervasive means it is through every part of you. Okay? So it's not just something you do on Tuesdays when you're hungry. It's not just something that affects you when you're happy. It's pervasive. It permeates every aspect of who you are. And it exists from early adulthood and generally lasts throughout one's life. According to the DSM-5, BPD can be diagnosed when a pattern, and remember Athena talked about that, it needs to be a pattern, of instability of interpersonal relationships, self-image, and affects, marked impulsivity in a variety of contexts occurs along with the 5 or more of the following criteria. Sorry, I think I mucked that sentence up, but and the first is frantic efforts to avoid real or imagined abandonment. And that word frantic there is key. So frantic efforts, not just, wow, I really don't want to be abandoned. This is awful. It's a frenzy of what can I do to prevent this because I think I might be abandoned. A pattern of unstable and intense interpersonal relationships characterized by alternating between extremes of idealization and devaluation. And that's that, oftentimes you'll hear that stereotypical phrase used to describe BPD, which is that statement, I hate you, please don't leave me. Okay, so that's that intensity. I love you, I love you, I love you, I hate you, I hate you, I hate you. Identity disturbance, markedly and persistently unstable self-image or sense of self. And remember, I told you that as we looked through these, you would see that it applies to trauma. Well, okay then, if someone was abused during the majority of their childhood, they're going to have an unstable self-image or sense of self. Absolutely are. In fact, they're probably going to have a healthy dose of self-loathing in there as well. Impulsivity in at least 2 areas which are potentially self-damaging. For example, substance abuse, binge eating, and reckless driving. Recurrent suicidal behavior, gestures or threats, or self-mutilating behavior. Again, those 2 describe people who went through abuse as children as well. Affective instability due to a marked reactivity of mood. Okay, reactivity of mood means that your mood changes according to what is happening around you. Your mood doesn't stay stable regardless of the fact. So if you're having a good day, you're happy, your mood is high. If someone shows up at the door and they, have come to tell you how, I don't know how much, your child just ran through their backyard and pulled up all their petunias. Your mood is going to stay stable. You're not going to plunge into despair or depression or sadness because of what that neighbor has to say. Chronic feelings of emptiness. Oh my goodness. I can't tell you how many times I've heard a survivor say, I feel invisible. I feel empty. There's nothing inside me. Inappropriate, intense anger or difficulty controlling anger. For example, frequent displays of temper, constant anger, recurrent physical fights. Again, Athena and I did a video about anger. Go back and take a look at that. And raging out at others can sometimes be a result of displaced anger from our abuse. Transient stress-related paranoid ideation or severe dissociative symptoms. Now, I don't even begin to understand how those 2 are in the same symptom, because paranoid ideation and dissociative symptoms are not at all related, but severe dissociative symptoms are definitely a symptom of having severe childhood abuse. So if you're reviewing these criteria and noticing they sound remarkably like the after effects of childhood abuse, many people would agree with you. Survivors of abuse are often misdiagnosed with BPD when in fact they have complex post-traumatic stress. And then we did a video there about common misdiagnoses. Up to 75% of those diagnosed with BPD report having suffered childhood sexual abuse. If you have been diagnosed with BPD and feel this diagnosis may be an error, please get a second opinion from a trauma-informed mental health professional. If you are correctly diagnosed with borderline personality disorder, the most effective therapy is dialectical behavior therapy. And that's Dr. Marsha Linehan's therapy method that she developed because she had borderline personality disorder. Cognitive behavioral therapy and schema-focused therapy are also helpful. A schema is a frame of reference for how you see yourself. So schema-focused therapy focuses on helping you to see yourself in a more healthy mindset. While there is no medication which treats a personality disorder, medications can be used to help treat symptoms such as anxiety and depression. Although many professionals consider BPD incurable, the truth is that you can markedly improve with the appropriate treatment, medication, and compassionate, respectful care. That last one, as they say, that last step is a doozy. That last one is absolutely critical. If you were raised by a parent with untreated borderline personality disorder, you likely exhibit many traits of a child raised in a dysfunctional, sometimes abusive home. You may have grown up with a parent who rages, threatens, is unavailable to you, and is generally unable to communicate in a healthy way, or even have a healthy relationship. So to cope with a parent with untreated BPD, employ these skills. Respond to a raging or otherwise abusive parent with a non-emotional, fact-based statement and then disengage. Okay, so if your parent is raging out at you about something, then rather than, Mom, I hate it when you get this way, this is ridiculous, I don't like this, simply come from a very emotionless responding point and just say, Mom, I have to go. And then disengage, hang up the phone. And then the pro tip is to respond rather than react. Try breathing deeply or counting to 5 before responding to the raging parent so that you don't use that emotional response. And this next one is to use PUVAS skills, and it's an acronym. It means pay attention, understand what is being said, validate the feelings, whether they're right or wrong, assert your position, and shift responsibility where it belongs. Do not ever take on the responsibility of educating your parent about their behavior or rescuing them from the consequences of their behavior, which is called enabling. Take care of and protect yourself first. We do understand this can be extremely difficult and makes a tremendous amount of courage. Many have shared with us their true stories of how they finally found the courage to assert and maintain healthy boundaries in their 40s, 50s, and 60s. Some, however, never find the courage to protect themselves from this abuse in an effort to be the good daughter or good son, sacrificing their own mental and emotional well-being for decades. We hope you will consider your own sanity and well-being. You deserve to heal. You deserve to not endure further abuse. And then develop a safe support system where you can practice new skills and become adept at asserting healthy boundaries with personality disordered individuals. Ask us about getting plugged in to a safe online support group. Oops, wrong one. Yay!
Yay! Thank you so much, Bobby.
You bet.
There are several comments on here about just how hard this work really is, Spiraling seems to be part of the journey. This work is so hard. You guys, I really just want to validate, want to sit up and act like I'm working instead of just lay back in my chair. I want to validate that this work we do, healing, and often it's not recovery, it's discovery. It's uncovering and discovering what it is that we really even are. We're not recovering anything, because many of us from birth were born into situations that were exploitative and dangerous and abusive. And this work is hard. And you showing up here is a choice. You didn't show up here on this YouTube channel by accident. No one shows up to hang out in our club by accident. It's a choice that you make because you want more. You want sanity. You want to enjoy your life. You want healthy relationships. You want to break the cycle of abuse for your children or your future grandbabies. And I want to commend that choice. The choice you've made to be here is powerful. And this work we do is hard. And I would love to just say that it's easy, and it just, it's going to be over really soon. But, we don't know that. It gets better. I do want to let you know it gets better. Bobby and I live lives right now that are very fulfilling, and we love our lives. Do we get triggered? Yeah. Do we have days where we struggle? Uh-huh. Do we sometimes struggle with bouts of depression? Yep. We still go through all the same stuff that you guys go through. We never show up here saying we have it all figured out. So, but it gets better. It doesn't consume us all day, every day anymore. And there's hope and healing. And you guys are choosing to be here. And the work is hard, but it's worth it. So well done being here, because it didn't happen on accident. And we're proud of you. Bobby, any questions?
It is hard, which is even more important that we do good self-care. And I know that so many of us have full lives. And frankly, sometimes recovery feels like a full-time job. So you're working a full-time job. Your recovery is a full-time job. You're parenting. You have all these roles. And working your recovery is a choice. And it's hard. So it's even more important that you take care of yourself and you renew when you need to be renewed, and you rest when you need to rest. It is one of the hardest things for survivors to learn how to do, is to take care of ourselves. But it's also one of the most important skills you will ever develop in your lifetime, and it will serve you for the rest of your lifetime. Like Athena said, we're not there. I'm not sure that there will ever be a point. I don't think it's realistic for me to expect in my personal journey that I'm ever going to be 100%, fantastic. But even if there was a point where I was 100% fantastic, my self-care skills would still serve me well in helping me stay at that place. So learn how to take care of yourself. Learn how to be kind. Learn how to acknowledge that this is hard work, and so therefore I need A, B, and C to continue doing the hard work. And recognize those as important and make them a priority, because they're just as important as sitting down and tackling the hard emotions and feelings that come from being raised in an abusive home. So Tina had asked a question about,
I saw that,
her GP making a diagnosis of suggesting possible borderline personality disorder. So my response to Tina is that a general practitioner is not qualified to make a diagnosis of borderline personality disorder. And I would look for a different general practitioner. And then I would if you really think that's an issue for you, and you want to explore whether or not that might be an appropriate diagnosis, look for someone who is a master's level or a psychologist who specializes in trauma-informed care. But, just because someone suggests it, and if you don't want to look into it, you don't have to. If you're working on your issues from your childhood, does the diagnosis really matter? As long as you're getting the appropriate care and the appropriate help that you need. I mean, you don't want a false diagnosis, but frankly, I'm kind of hoping there might come a day when the medical model, which relies on diagnoses and putting people in boxes, is not the end-all be-all in the mental health treatment field. So I'm not one to believe that either you have to have a diagnosis or actually that there is something broken or wrong with you. So, but that's another video.
Yeah.
So,
I love how you said that, though. This is a long video, guys. This is a big topic, and it needed to be a long video. So, Bobby, do you still want to do the screen shares?
Yes, let's do those.
Okay.
Let's go ahead and work through those.
Okay.
And
say goodbye to everybody first.
I never got a chance to. Yes. Thank you for being here this week, you guys. I know this is long, but at the same point, I'm really glad that we had the opportunity to answer your questions. And if you're watching this on a replay and you have questions, go ahead and go over and tweet us and use the hashtag #NoMoreShame, and hopefully we'll catch them as we try and monitor the hashtag. But otherwise, we will see you next week. We're going to talk about public shaming, and kind of along the lines of, if someone uses your story against you publicly and shames you for your story, we're going to talk about that. So,
and as childhood sexual abuse as well. For instance, I've had 2 people recently tell me that their abusers shamed them publicly as part of their control.
Yes.
The control
yes.
that they were exerting over the child. Like one of my clients, her dad would call her names publicly and make fun of her breasts publicly. The father who was sexually abusing her.
Yeah.
And in front of everybody, in front of the whole family, like at the beach or like whenever. Like he had like a special nickname for her, all about her boobs.
Wow.
Like, and publicly would shame her. And that's only one. Like there are countless stories. And the reason we're even doing this topic is someone DM'd me, someone who is a public figure DM'd me and was shamed on national television by another public figure regarding her sexual abuse.
Wow.
Yeah, wow is right. It's just, and it is so stigmatizing. It is so triggering. And so we're going to tackle that topic of public shaming next week. Big topic. And then that's on the 24th. And then on the 31st, don't miss it. It's my birthday. And nothing says happy birthday, Athena, like the topic of self-sabotage. Right, Bobby? So we're going to cover the topic of self-sabotage because that's what topic you guys said you needed. And happy birthday to me, self-sabotage. So we're looking forward to bringing you those 2 very, very important topics. And then we have more topics for you, of course, new topic every week. Starting in November, we'll be covering a whole slew of other topics. So if you have a suggestion for a topic that you would like us to cover, please send it to nomoreshameproject@gmail.com. Leave a comment below this video if you have a suggestion for a topic. Head on over to the About section of our YouTube channel or reach out and connect with us in any which way you would like. Bobby has great screen shares for the next 5 minutes. If you want to stick around and you're new, then we will let you know how to get in contact with us personally and welcome you into Safe Community. Otherwise, thank you for being here, and it's an honor to have you here every single week. Go ahead, Bobby.
Okay, let's look at ways that you can be in safe community. All of these ways are free. They do not cost anything. They never will cost anything. We would love to have you as a part of our Twitter community. We have 3 Twitter chats a week. The first one is Monday at 10 a.m. Pacific time and 6 p.m. in the UK. The hashtag for that is CSAQT, which stands for Child Sexual Abuse Question Time. The second Twitter chat is this one, if you're with us live, where we do an interactive video and Twitter chat. The hashtag is No More Shame. And it is at 6 p.m. Pacific, 9 Eastern, or 2 o'clock Tuesday morning if you're in the UK. And then Tuesday evening is the original chat that started it all, sex abuse chat, and that is at 6 p.m. Pacific, 9 o'clock Eastern, or Wednesday at 2 o'clock in the morning if you're in the UK. Sorry. If you would like to join one of our support groups, there's a 4-step process, and we ask that you use this rather than sending us emails or messaging us on our professional Facebook pages. It's very simple. Hop over to Facebook, like the Trauma Recovery University page, send friend requests to both Athena and I, and then after one of us accepts it, message that person with I'd like to heal in safe community, or I'd like to join one of your support groups, something along that line. And then we may ask you some questions if we don't know you from Twitter, Facebook, or a personal in-person event. And that is just to make sure that you're not a predator, that you're safe to allow into our support groups. And then once we have determined that you're safe, we will put you in one of our support groups, and we will post an introduction so that everyone can meet you and say hello. If you would like to watch or view any of our videos, you can find them on YouTube. You can find them on Roku TV, and you can also always find them at bit.ly/trauma recovery U. And those capitals do matter. So let's look at ways that you can get into contact with us. And that's one final slide here. Okay, you can connect with the Athena and I. Oops, wrong one. Sorry, hang on. There. Yay! Via email. And my email address is bobbylparish@gmail.com. Athena's as Athena Moberg Speaking @gmail.com. And then we have our joint email, which is nomoreshameproject@gmail.com. On Twitter, I am Bobby L. Parish. Athena is Athena Moberg, and Trauma Recovery University is Trauma Recovery U. On Facebook, we have our Trauma Recovery University page. My professional page is Bobby Parish Coaching and Consulting. My personal page is Bobby Parish. Athena's professional page is Athena Moberg Speaking, and her personal page is Dawn Athena Moberg. And then there's the reminders that you can find us on YouTube, Roku TV, and Google+, or at bit.ly/trauma recovery U. And that's it. Thank you, everybody, for being here. And like Athena said, next week we're going to talk about public shaming. And then after that, self-sabotage. And then someone suggested the topic of kind of a sibling survivor guilt. So what do you do if your sibling was abused and you were not, and perhaps you're dealing with some guilt that you weren't able to save them or prevent them from being abused. So that one, look for that coming up in November.
Hey, Bobby.
Otherwise,
Amanda wants to know if we've ever done a video on addiction.
I don't think so.
I don't
that
think
would be an excellent one to do.
I don't think we've ever done addiction per se. I think we did one that talked a lot about unhealthy coping strategies.
Yeah.
But I think covering the topic of like the statistics alone of how connected childhood sexual abuse and addiction are eye-opening.
Yep.
There's simply irrefutable evidence to prove that many people, in fact, there's a TED Talk out there that says if we were to really open our eyes, we would see that we are not dealing with necessarily an addiction problem. We're dealing with a child abuse problem.
Right. Who is that? Johann Hari?
Gosh, I forget, but it's not a popular narrative. It's not a popular narrative, but it is an accurate one.
Yep.
So great topic. So we have sibling survivor guilt, and we have addiction, and how both are correlated with adult survivors of childhood sexual abuse.
Got it. I wrote it down.
Sweet. Great suggestion, Amanda. You guys, this has been amazing. Thank you for being here with us. As Bobby said, we are so honored that you would choose to spend an hour. Actually, it's been almost 2 hours. This is a long video. We are honored that you would spend 2 hours of your week with us. This topic deserved the amount of attention that we gave. We will likely receive a ton of complaints in the comments about we need to just shut up already and get to the point. But you guys that show up here every single week, the ones that appreciate the answers to your questions, you're the reason that we do this. So any complaints down below, it's fine. They're trolls, or they don't get it, or they're not a member of our community yet. But we do it for you. You guys are the reason we do everything we do. So 2 hours or not, we're grateful that you chose to be here with us. Bobby, did you want to say bye to everybody?
Thank you so much, everyone, for being here. And we're going to slide down the rest of the year to pretty soon here into the holidays. So we'll be doing some videos and sharing some information with you on strategies about getting through the holidays, because they can be really hard. So thank you for being with us. We're honored you're here, and we hope to see you next week. Same place, same time.
Yeah, every single week, you guys. Mondays, 6 p.m. Pacific, 9 p.m. Eastern, using the hashtag No More Shame, or right here on this Roku TV channel or this YouTube channel. So thanks for being here. I'm Athena Moberg, and this is Bobby Parrish, and we love bringing you everything you need for healthy, informed trauma recovery. Bye, everybody.